Fall is approaching us, and we could not be more excited about what's coming down the pike as we look into the fall months. College football, gray, wet weather. I like chili, and chili has to have cheese on top and some saltine crackers. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Committed, the college planning playbook. John, how you doing, my friend?
Good, brother. Start of the new year, chaos as always, but excited to get another batch of kids in here. Excited to do this thing all over again.
It is a start of a new year. Academic years are what really our timetables are based on. I don't know why these people live by the calendar year. I live by an academic year. August through May is when it all happens. And there is something big about a calendar year, though. You just celebrated a birthday.
I did. And you have one coming up this week too.
I have one coming up. I have one coming up. Now, tell me, how did you and the family and your friends celebrate your birthday?
Oh, I got spoiled. Did a little Taco Tuesday last week. So the boys, my wife, my nieces actually, they came, went, hit a Mexican place. It was great, as always. Had the birthday cake, got the photos, the handmade cards. Those hit different. Now being a dad and my kid can actually write and draw, those are priceless.
Those go in the drawer. You keep those. Keep those
Mhm.
in the scrapbook. Those go in the
Yep.
drawer. All those different types of things.
Yep, they're already stashed away.
Well, today, guys, I want us to take time to learn about John. It's his birthday, and we're celebrating John on this episode, but we're also celebrating college planning and learning a little bit about the college planning industry and how college planning services could help your family. And we're going to do that through the lens of looking at my friend John Izzo. And man, you've had a spectacular run to the place you are now, and just a leading college planner in the industry. Tell us where it all got started. Tell us everything up to the point to where you decided to get into the game.
My story, I think it's so obviously me being old to these kids, but still being relatively younger. I vividly remember what got me into, first off, becoming a school counselor and then transitioning into becoming an independent educational consultant, AKA college planner. So I feel like my story is really relatable because when I was these students' age, and I may have shared this before, probably not in as much depth, my whole world was based around going to college to get a baseball scholarship to eventually play professional baseball. I came from a family that, I mean, beyond supportive, loved me, saw the value in education, but it was mainly based around, okay, you're going to go to school so you can go play ball. And so I tell this story with pretty much every new family I work with. I feel like I'm effective at this job because I remember what you guys thought. I remember how you felt at 17 years old. And, long story short, I rode the baseball thing as far as I could possibly take it. And, I wish somebody back then would have told me you're not as good as you thought you were, or you're not as good as, people kept telling you you were.
How can
And,
someone disappoint you, though, John? That would be such
you know what?
a hard thing to tell a kid.
As difficult as it would have been, I wish that I would have known sooner because, you know, fast forward, 4 years, go through college, play ball, play a little bit of independent ball very briefly. And, I have this degree that I'm really not able to utilize. And, I remember, graduated college, 4 years of debt, spent $120,000 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And I was roofing with my dad because for what I majored in, the job market, I could make more money as a roofer
What was
and
your major?
psych. So
Psychology.
the good old undergraduate degree in psychology. It's a
Yeah,
great
yeah.
stepping stone, but going into it, I didn't realize you have to go on for more schooling. The bachelor's degree in psych, it's limiting you as far as what kind of jobs you're able to get.
Sure.
And so I had that aha moment where, it's 110 degrees. I'm, putting a roof on with my dad, thinking, I have all this debt. I don't want to do this forever. And so I kept thinking back, you know what? I wish I would have done things differently. I wish that I would have, explored different things. I wish I would have given myself outs. So I went to school to get my master's degree in school counseling.
Yeah.
I like the idea of being able to, be a guidance counselor within a school, you know, essentially help them see the options that I wish that I saw back in the day. So went, got my master's degree, was a school counselor, and like a lot of other careers, what the job was and what you thought it was, two totally different things. And I had this impression that, what, I can yank a kid out of study hall and I can, help them figure out what do you want to do with life and where do you want to apply? And let's, get the essays in and let's create a timeline. It's not realistic, and, I can speak from the perspective of a former counselor when I, talk to my families that, the counselors, they mean well. They're just they're overworked. They're juggling a caseload of 400 or 500 students. And unless a kid is extremely proactive, they're comfortable with going and badgering, or if you're a problem kid, for this stage of, what they're doing in high school, you're left to fend for themselves. So I did the counselor thing.
Incredibly hard job. Hard job.
Hard job for sure. And, when I realized that, there's so many limitations to this thing, I wanted to somehow, figure out a way where I can still do what I love because I love the ability to impact these kids and make a difference. And I also, from a financial standpoint, at that point, married, starting to have a family, the idea of starting a business was intriguing. And that was when I dove into our particular brand, Class 101, and, you know, did the exploration process and looked at corporate and saw kind of how the structure is. And, once I learned that, somebody's full-time career could be a college planner, not linked to a school district, it was almost a no-brainer for me. Like the transition was so seamless. And yeah, I mean, there's growing pains like any other business, but I'm hitting 8 years this October, and it's been the best ride.
So let's take a step back and let's talk about, young John Izzo, the baseball player. Do you, based on what you do now, you told us a little bit about things you wish you'd have known, right? And that inspired you to be that school counselor. But do you look back on one of those coaches or teachers and kind of model yourself based on what they did, or and how they influenced your life and how you want to influence others?
Honestly, no.
No, is it the opposite? Is
It
there
is,
anything they did do that you're like, I don't want to do that?
you know what? So, not to diminish any of the support that I had, but I feel like I grew up in a time in that particular situation in my life, everybody was pushing the baseball thing. And, I understand how fortunate I was because there's people that, have a passion and they are not given the support. But when I look back, I would have, as a 38-year-old, I would have preferred that, yeah, you know what? Ride the baseball thing. Here's all your options, here's all your schools, your scholarship offers. But I want you to also take a step back and think, when you're 30 years old and you are no longer able to play baseball, what's your life going to look like? And that was what never occurred to me. And that is what I try to do now with my students and then also with my kids. I always want you to think, first off, not being a martyr, but worst case scenario, and you never know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah,
So, yeah, you
yeah.
know, get the exposure, go chase your dream, but make sure you have plans B, C, and D lined up for if and when it doesn't work out.
This, I have this. We all see students who have these aspirations to be a pro, right? And the reality is that sooner or later, they're going to play their last game. All right, that might be in high school, that might be in college, and if they're fortunate enough, it could be in the pros. But sooner or later, they are going to play their last game, and they have to know what's after that. All right, they have to start thinking about how I can plan and prepare for that. And so, no, I love that you're asking that question. And I heard you say something else. You wish people would have talked to you about degrees and what you would do with degrees. Right, you felt like you were at a dead end with your degree. Not that psychology is a dead end degree. No, I don't hear John saying that. I hear John saying but it's a step to something else. You have to say, if I'm going
Mhm.
to do psychology, graduate school is probably my future if I'm going to do
Correct.
career field. And that's probably shaped you as a college planner too, to say, no, that's great. There's a long-term goal here of where you want to be.
Mhm.
So you're sitting down, you're frustrated because you can't do the work as a school counselor that you want to do, one-on-one, high impact, high influence, helping people transition. You look at a business model and you look at college planning as a career path. What are the two or three things that really attracted you to being a college planner?
Number one would be the opportunity to be a business owner.
Yeah,
So having the ability to run things the way that I want to run. Now, obviously, we have to stay within brand standards for, what we signed up for, but the ability to essentially make all of the decisions that's going to make it function. With that, obviously, comes risk, and that's, not for the weak. Honestly, any business owner out there knows it's, incredibly rewarding when it's going well, and it's incredibly lonely when it's not. Impacting the kids, obviously. So taking, you know, what I enjoy doing and being able to do it, I always like to say, on my own terms. So very much of what we do, you and I both, because we run our businesses the same essentially. We get all of the perks of being a school counselor, but it's on our terms. We're
yeah,
not limited to a 7 to 3 school day. We're not limited to, block scheduling. I can, it's silly as it sounds, I don't have to wear a shirt and tie to work, and I can create my own schedule, and I can hire and, grow and expand how I see fit. So I mean, impacting the kids and making a difference and helping them is obvious, but the ability to run my own business as an entrepreneur is almost just as intriguing.
yeah. I mean, I love what you're saying here because being able to take that risk, jumping out and doing something on your own, but knowing that you really can be the captain of your own ship to create the highest impact and the highest good for a high school student and their family. You know what needs to be done. You can call the shot. You know where you can meet the student where they're at and help them get where they need to be. Where in other places you may not be able to do that because one arm's tied behind your back and there's limitations. And that's exciting, right? To be able to say I can make the adjustments that I feel are necessary to provide the highest value and the highest good to a student and to their family. Um, do you have a story? Like I know I have. Like sometimes life is like golf. Like I'll play 18 holes of golf and I'll hit terrible shots, but then there's that one good shot. Right?
The
That
shot that
shot
brings you back.
it brings you back, right? It's my
Mhm.
Scotty Scheffler or my Tiger Woods shot. I actually can, and I believe this. I can hit one shot as good as they do. The problem is they hit like 60 of them that good. I only hit one shot out of like my 80 some shots. But it's that one shot that brings me back. Do you have that story of that one student that would, like you said, there's frustrations and it's hard, but it says, no, this is worth it. Because you remember that story, that one student?
Yeah, honestly, I mean, there's been almost countless kids that have come through the door that I feel like, I myself and my team, we've made their lives better, whether it was alleviating the stress of going through the application process, finding a school that was never in their radar, allowing the mom and dad to salvage a relationship for their last year in high school without being the constant badgerers. They leave that to us. But if there's one student that I'll never forget, it was a girl 3, 4 years ago at this point, and she was exceptional, worked incredibly hard, smart. The home situation was not ideal. And, I'm not going to go into specifics. And honestly, I don't even know the specifics, but what I do know is all of the interaction came from the student, which is rare because normally, consultations and, contract signing, all of those things typically happen with the families, parent, guardian, whatever. And this girl, she owned the entire process. She called, she inquired, we met. Um, she revealed that, she doesn't have a ton of support. And, we came up with a payment structure. And I knew that she had so much potential, but she just didn't know how to go about it. And I will never forget the first day that we met. She brought in a check for our first monthly payment. And she said, "Hey, wait and cash this tomorrow because I'm going to get a paycheck from Texas Roadhouse." And I ripped it up, did the whole thing pro bono because at that point it wasn't about the money. I am fortunate that I was able to be at a place in my business where, I was able to have a revenue stream coming in where I could do that for somebody who truly needed it and didn't take a penny the whole time, went through the application, the schools, did her financial aid apps. She ended up going to the University of Pittsburgh within their nursing program, which is like one of the best in the country for practically nothing. And it was it wasn't me doing anything other than showing her the path that she needed to take.
Yeah.
And, you know, again, who knows what her backstory was, but she is creating a life for herself now that is vastly different from where she came. That's hopefully gonna, launch her trajectory and her kids. And it's just you're breaking a cycle. And it's so cool.
Yeah. That's awesome story, man. And I think that's important for people to see is that yeah, we're entrepreneurs and yeah, we're business owners, but we're entrepreneurs on with a purpose. And it's this belief that we have that, with high impact will come the income. We don't chase after the income, we chase after the impact. And with that impact comes the income, and that's being an entrepreneur for purpose. And so I love that, you've created that in your life to where you can see a student who really, really you have an opportunity to make a high impact, and it's okay that the income wasn't there, right? Because you're on purpose, and you'll know it'll come back somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so that's a really, really cool story that I love. It shares your heart, and it shares your heart for college planning, and it shares your heart for students, and that's what really, really makes you the great college planner you're on, are, John. Now, last question here. In this world that we play in, right? This game that we play in, that watch this are probably wondering, what college planning is, and if they do, all they have to do is look on their social media feed, and there's just a lot of junk out there. Let's be honest.
Mhm.
Anyone can hang a shingle and say they're a college planner, and how do you know they're good? How do you know that they're worth the investment? How do you know whether that family should invest in that person or not? What would you say? Take yourself out of the equation. What should a family who's looking at a college look at investing in college planning? What should they look for to know that someone's credible and really able to follow up on and follow through on the things that they're saying they can do?
I think they first have to ask themselves, what do you hope to get out of this experience?
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because, depending on each college planner's operational structure, sometimes there's, an a la carte service where, you know, there's some test prep, there's essay writing, you can apply to up to this many schools, and it's all, separate cost. Some people, I think, are seeking out college planning support for lack of knowledge, or they want to do it strategically. They understand or they've heard that college planning is a game now. So they want it to be done well, strategic. And that relationship piece where, just like people have a lawn guy and people have an accountant, they want to just be able to rely on an expert in that field. So I think a family first and foremost needs to understand, what do you hope to get out of the experience? And then if I was hiring a college planner, I would want somebody to be transparent. I would want somebody to be honest. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors, and there's a lot of data that comes out, and there's, a lot of stats that may be meaningful and maybe not. And, perfect example, I oftentimes, a family will ask, if we're looking at this as a financial investment, on average, how much scholarship money do your students earn per year? Now, I could very easily, pull through my data that we track every year, and I can tell them, yeah, you know what, every student, they average, $46,000 a year in merit scholarships. Yeah, that's great if they go to a particular school. If you want to go to Penn State or if you want to go to a school that, traditionally gives no money, you're not going to get anything. So transparency, I think, is so important. The ability to relate to somebody based on what your wants are and your needs are. I think somebody that really can connect with the students and build that rapport, I think that's above all, maybe one of the most important things
Yeah.
because you can have all the knowledge in the world. You can have the process down. And if you cannot get a kid to buy in, and if you can't build that relationship and they are not excited to come into your office and get this stuff done, it's going to be a losing battle.
Yeah. I completely agree. I love what you said. I think if I'm looking at a college planner for my kids, I'm wanting them to come with me to meet the college planner to see if there's that rapport, see how they feel about it. I love what you said about the return on investment. Both of us have, probably one of the giant as a mentor. Both of us have Tom Paban, who's probably one of the giants in the college planning industry, probably one of the first out there, is a pioneer in this industry. He mentored both of us and reiterated the importance of the emotional return on investment. Can you put a price tag on a peace of mind? Can you put a price tag on less stress during your senior year? But what I want our listeners to hear are the questions that I've asked John today are the questions you should feel comfortable with anyone who is going to be your family's college planner. You want to know a little bit about their background. You should want to know about their educational background. You should want to know a little bit about their professional background, and you should want to know how they made this decision to become a college planner. How did they get to where they are? You should want to know. All right, you should be able to ask them about what they love about what they do currently. What do they think they're great about what they do currently? They should be able to tell you a success story. All right, they should be able to tell you a success story like John did of that one student. He will always keep in mind this one student that keeps him coming back even when the days are hard. Those are things that I think and John think that you need to be able to ask to get to know a college planner and get to know who's helping your family. And most importantly, this is very important, guys, that is investing in speaking in to the life of your teenager. You should take that extremely seriously because what we do is more than college planning. In some ways, we just happen to be college planners. What we're doing is we're mentoring and speaking into the life of your teenager, and you should take that extremely seriously and not be afraid to dive into these questions that John so comfortably and confidently answered today. John, you're outstanding, man. You make us all better, and it is fun to celebrate you in your birthday, and it's fun to celebrate you today. I appreciate you, ton, and thanks for joining me on our podcast today.